Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to show you how to fine-tune Severne's most versatile sail on the market, the Moto. This sail is an absolutely game changer for anyone who's looking to push their limits a little bit more on the water without having to go full on race sail mode. So I think that this sail is the perfect crossover from free riding to full on racing. So I'm going to give you guys the go-to tips. My dad is using the 5.8 Moto and the 6.8 Moto most of the time. And so from all his experience on the water with these sails, I've also tested these sails quite a few times. Here in Langebaan we get the whole range of conditions. So we've got all the best tips for you guys. Any one of you who is not familiar yet with the Moto and where it falls in the whole Severne sail range, I've made a complete video. I'll put the link here in the description for you guys. I think the most important part of this whole setup is the boom. Firstly, because it really have a massive impact on the profile of the sail. So this one boom that Severne makes, the 160 to 210 carbon Enigma boom, is the only boom that you need for the whole range of moto sails. It's extremely rigid, super light, very thin in the hands. You can't get a better boom for these motos, and I love the fact that you only need one boom for all the sails. The best part of these booms is that it lasts almost a lifetime. Just to give you guys an idea, this is the newer one that I've got now, and this is the one I've used almost all my life. It's one of the first ones that Severne makes, and it's still fully functional and in action. So we're gonna rig the 5.8 Moto with this boom. This is the 430 blue line RDM. You can use either the blue line or the red line. It's very important to use a Severne mast, no other brand, because that will ensure that the sail rigs in its perfect shape. So the extension reading on the sail says 4, but we are gonna put it on 6 because this sail is not brand new. It has stretched a little bit already, just to give that extra bit of room for proper downhaul. I really prefer using the carbon extensions in comparison to the aluminium extensions. They just last that much longer, they don't corrode, and they are super light. We need to downhaul the sail completely so that we can put on the boom. So just the same as the extension, the setting for the boom on the sail says 177, but we're gonna keep this boom on 180 to compensate for the bit of stretch that's already happened, which is pretty normal. We use a little inner inside of this boom clamp so that it just clamps on really tightly onto the RDM mast, and so that it doesn't overlap the two grips of the boom clamps, and so that it sits in the same position, doesn't move around. put the boom quite high so that you've got room to put on the cambers. The outhaul, we've got like a little shortcut here, which is a bit like a wave sail maneuver. To save some time, we just make a loop and it hooks in there. So you want to tighten the outhaul slightly just to get the cams to put onto the mast easily. Okay, so the next step is to release the downhaul so that we can apply the cams. The sail, the Motos have got 7 battens and 2 cams. Make sure that the cams are nicely fitted before you pull the last bit of downhaul. The Moto is designed with extremely high skin tension, so it's really important to get the downhaul properly correct for the sail to be super light and responsive. So I've downhauled it now so that the sail starts opening up from about the middle line of the boomerang. This gives the sail a nice twist, so it's not draggy, it's responsive, and it's got the right amount of control in the hands. So you need to pull enough downhaul so that the leech is floppy up to about the middle of the boomerang, and that gives the right amount of twist. Depending on whether you use a seat harness or a waist harness, you can now adjust your boom height. I typically prefer my boom to be quite low. The biggest mistake I see a lot of people make is they tend to tighten the outhaul way too much. It's very important with a cambered sail to have the outhaul loose so that the sail can set into its profile. If you've got the outhaul too tight, which is mostly what happens when people think they're going to be overpowered, the whole sail becomes super twitchy, you lose the backhand pressure, and it's really unstable and more out of control. So I would release the outhaul quite a lot, so that it's kind of neutral, and when you push the boom back and forth like that, it slightly touches onto the boom naturally. So this is pretty normal for it to touch onto the boom quite a lot standing still on the lawn. Once you get onto the water, the wind is going to push into the sail and it will push that way. So this will give the sail enough depth, and it will feel a lot more stable in your hands. So for now I can just see that the boom setting is a little bit wide, so I'm going to get the boom to be closer to the sail. You don't want it to stick out this wide, so just release the clamps, and then we're going to put it one setting smaller. So this is very important to not always just look on the sail for readings. You want to be able to rig and customize as you go, because with time the sail does stretch, and it will require you to use different settings than what states down at the bottom of the sail. If it's a brand new sail, you can follow the exact settings stated on the sail itself, but as soon as you start sailing, I mean like from the second session onwards, you must really keep on feeling and adjusting because especially in the first few sessions the sail tends to stretch quite a bit. So it's very good if you can customize it as you go. So the last step, and also one of the most important steps, is to fine-tune the batten tension. The amount of tension that you put on each one of these battens changes the way the skin tension over the whole sail reacts. So it's really important to have the right batten tension throughout the whole sail. This is also something that changes as the sail stretches. You can continuously test the batten tension to see whether the sail has stretched and whether you need more tension. One easy way to see when you need more tension is when there is a lot of horizontal wrinkles on one of the panels coming from the batten, then you know that particular batten needs more tension. But so we'll start this sail from the bottom upwards. The bottom batten gets the most tension. So you really want to tighten the bottom batten a lot. It immediately gives the sail a deeper belly down there. The second batten from the bottom also gets quite a bit of tension, a little bit less than the bottom one. And then as we move up, the tension will become less and less. Okay, so the bottom three battens have got the most tension in them. Then the fourth and fifth batten, these two battens can have a lighter tension on them. And then moving up, the two top battens will have more tension on them, because that will help the sail to open up. The Moto is a direct descendant of the Mach sails, so it is in between freeride and full-on race. What makes this sail especially unique is that they brought in the boom length, so the sail is slightly shorter, which gives it a deeper belly, and that gives the sail like a racy leading edge. The luff curve is also really highly tapered, which makes the sail super light while still being very powerful. So it's like the best of both worlds between racing and free riding. Then the sail is also designed to have really high skin tension, so which makes it very responsive and a light feel in the hands. It's got really great backhand pressure, perfect balance in the hands. So it's a lot more of a locked position, stable ride, and you get planing through the lulls much more effortlessly than you would with a completely soft sail. So as you can see, the sleeve, the luff sleeve, is drastically tapered. This makes the sail very, very light, and also it really helps a lot when you need to water start. It's not as heavy. There's not so much water that can fill the luff sleeve. So it pulls out easily out of the water, and also it makes jibing and rotation effortless. So in the Moto range, they've got 4.8 all the way up to 8.4 in sizes. This is the 5.8. In that entire range, you only need this one boom and then 3 different masts, and then you'll be able to rig the whole range. So it's really very simplistic. The Moto is also part of the XR project, which means it's an extended range technology that went into the Motos, which means for every sail size you can have like such a wider wind range. So you don't need to have each and every single size in between. This sail can cover a whole range of different wind strengths. So that's really a very great advantage, and it makes it a lot more simple to pick between sail sizes. Then very importantly, when you are going to go over from a total free ride background where you're used to the NCXs, the Gators, and you're going to cross over to a cambered sail like the Mach or like the Motos, the most important part is that the biggest thing to get used to is the rotation of the cams. So that is just something that you'll have to keep in mind, especially when you fail a jibe and you have to like water start. To pop the cams through and to get up and going again is a little bit more complicated than with the total free ride sails. But once you get the hang of it, it becomes second nature. And the difference between the Moto maneuvering and the Mach maneuvering is massive. The Moto definitely gives you the best of both worlds with minimum extra effort and adaptation from free riding. What is really important with especially a deeper profile sail like the Motos or the Machs is that the harness lines are not wide apart. This is the max width I would personally set the harness lines, because you need to allow the sail when you hook in to breathe, to open and close as it should, because that top part of the sail is made for powering up, depowering the sail. So when a gust hits the sail, the top part of the sail that opens up, that is the magic of it. It releases the power as needed. So you don't want to stand here being hooked into the sail and muscle the sail into a position. It wants to be able to breathe, and in that way you also get to be more in a locked position. Your body gets to stay in a solid racing position, and you don't get lifted up and down and feeling unstable. When you are sailing and you feel that the sail is dead, like nothing is really happening, this specific sail has got such a deep profile, it should have a nice punch to it. But if the sail is feeling like it's not going anywhere, then it means that you've got too much downhaul. If you put too much downhaul, it flattens the whole profile. So release just a little bit of the downhaul and you'll see the sail will start to get life again. And then on the other hand, if you feel that the sail is sort of pulling you around, it's straining your arms, that could be because you've got too little downhaul. So the sail isn't opening up. The less downhaul you pull, the less the sail will twist. So the sail will pull on your arms instead of releasing the power when it should. So then you need a bit more downhaul. When you feel like you are getting too much backhand pressure consistently, and you've already set your lines in the right position, that could be that the sail, the outhaul is too loose. You don't want the sail to bulge over the boom, because that will distort the whole profile, and that just defies the whole object. So then you need to tighten a little bit of the outhaul, but not too much. You want it to still press softly onto the boom, lightly, because then it gives enough room here for this profile to set in deep.
Okay.
So it's March now in Langebaan. So the kind of winds we get these days is kind of inconsistent. There's a lot of holes. So then it really becomes important to set the outhaul on the right eyelet. So at the moment it's set on the top eyelet, which means it will give maximum power. It means that the sail starts opening from a bit higher, so this bit here receives more power, and then it only starts releasing. So if you feel overpowered, consistently overpowered, and you move it down onto the bottom eye hole, the sail will start opening up sooner. So you'll have a little bit less power and more control for high winds.
Okay.
So for those of you who cross over for the first time to a cambered sail, this tends to be one of the more difficult things to get used to. So here's a really cool tip for getting the sail out of the water if you fail a jibe. And the luff sleeve is filled with water. The sail and the board is in this position, and you can't seem to get your head under here and pop the cam through to the right position in order to water start. Here in Langebaan we've got super strong tides, which adds to that difficulty. It can tend to pull the sail under the water. So this tip really helps a lot when you're in that situation. The easy way to go at it is to get the sail, to pull the sail so that the board starts lifting the sail in this position. So you basically just push the board's tail under the sail so that the sail starts slanting up like this. And in this position, all the water in this sleeve will run out the bottom without any effort from your side. And this will also help the wind to catch the sail and get it to lift out of the water from this angle. An interesting challenge that occurs in this situation here now, with the Mach sails, the cam sits here, so it's easy to get under the sail and pop it through with your head. But in this situation, the top cam is sitting below the boom, so it's nearly impossible to get your head right there and push it through with your head. So the best way to go at it is to hold onto the boom and the mast and put your foot onto the cam and just give it a kick. And that effortlessly pops the sail through, and then from here you can easily get it to lift out of the water, and the wind will pop the rest of the sail into that position so that you can water start. We use the Fox, the Severne Fox with the Moto. It's really like the best combo. The magic about the Motos is that you can use either a full-on race board or a free race board with the Moto. And that also means that you can put a full-on racing carbon fin into the Fox, or use it with the standard fin, which it comes with, which is more a free ride-ish fin, depending on what kind of like session you prefer to have. More high-speed session, put in a race fin. A more free ridey session, you can put in a free ride fin. The Fox is very well designed for free ride, free race. It really eats the chop, and it's such a good partner for the moto sails. It's super easy to jibe, and it's super quick on the acceleration, so it's really the best complement to the sail.